Welcome, welcome, welcome. And thank you for joining us for another episode of today's Electrical Estimating. I'm your co host, Chris Trommer. And as always, I'm joined by our other co host, Sal Huerta.
Hello, everyone.
So, Sal, we're going to be jumping into a topic today that I don't want to call it buzzworthy because it is changing everything, but it is something that's being talked about everywhere, which is AI. And luckily, we have a great guest with us, Will Zacher, who is, I believe, the co-founder and president of Makeoff, a new AI estimating platform. And our conversation really leads into what AI does within the estimating space, its capabilities, things of that nature. But for you being in this industry for the last 40 some odd years and watching the technology really emerge from, paper plans and paper pricing and all that fun stuff into, hard copy platforms to online platforms and pricing services and everything in between. I think you bring a real perspective to the changing tides, I guess, of how estimators might be looking at this. Cause, you hear people that say AI is going to take my job. What's your thoughts on this new and emerging technology that AI is bringing into the estimating space?
So, whenever there is a disruption of any sort, doesn't matter what industry it is, there's always going to be casualties. I mean, that's just the nature of the business. I mean, when the automobile came out, nobody really needed, stables anymore, where
Mhm.
they housed your horses and you took your wagon to. I mean, those places actually went away when the advent of, cars came. And so, it's just a natural progression of things happening. You mentioned earlier about pricing services and so forth. Back in, we're talking 20, 30 years ago, everything was paper based. So you had a
Mhm.
catalog on your desk with, all the items and pricing. Well, when, computers came out, all of that went away. But when you think of that a little differently, it's not just paper that was gone. I mean, the printing guy who printed those things out, the editors who had to actually hand type the stuff and, on typewriters, whole groups of people were eliminated because of a computer that now can manage all that information inside there. So again, these things happen all the time and it's just natural progression of business. But also there are things that stay. Obviously experience is something that you can't, program. Um, the way people use AI will be what stays. The old saying, not the old saying, but the saying that's buzzing around is, AI can't build a house. AI can't, clean a drain. There's going to be those things that are going to still stay and, and become more amplified, but AI will assist them in what they're doing.
And I think that's a good point. I mean, I use AI every day. Obviously, I'm in marketing and sales, but so I use it as more of a tool. I mean, I feel like there's some people out there that feel that it's going to just take over and it can do everything. I can firsthand tell you it cannot just generate stuff for you. Like if I went in there and just said make me a social media post, it comes out with stuff that's very generic. It's not on point. Um, the wording is off. It's clunky. It still needs somebody to, I guess, point it in the right direction. It's sort of like that whole good data in, good data out. But if you're feeding it junk, you're going to get junk back. So I sort of see some of these AI tools and platforms that are coming out. And I think Will talks to this point as being more of the assistant to an estimator. I mean, you're never going to lose an estimator's ability to look at something and understand what needs to happen next or understand the shortcuts or has done this enough times that they know the ins and outs and little tricks that can help them through the estimate to save money, save labor, save time that an AI program still has to learn and then perfect and understand maybe in time, but I still think taking that human element out really takes away a major piece of not only estimating, but anybody else or any other profession that uses AI, because the human brain and the human's ability to look at things a certain way really leads the way with being able to focus AI on what it really needs.
Yeah, what AI can do today that will pick up on the little things that you might have missed. Hey, there's a small little note that's stuck in a little box on the blueprint somewhere that was added in later, kind of
Mhm.
thing. You just bypassed it because you thought, well, I already finished that section. It's not there anymore. Addendums, like I just said, things that were added later that you already finished that part of it. That's when AI can go back quickly, look over everything and tell you, XYZ is something that you missed here. You might want to look at it. That's where
Yeah,
I think AI is really going to help.
I know a lot of companies that I've seen are trying to perfect as well the takeoff portion because it is so consuming, excuse me, and tedious and repetitive for every single bid. It's something you have to do to make it so that AI would be able to, you know, take on that role. But I think, as Will points out later in our conversations and other places I've seen, there's so many different symbols that mean so many different things that look so much alike that are within these plans that are sort of close together that could be interpreted one way to another that the technology might not fully be there yet where you can feel very confident to a 99 percentile to what it's giving you back on the takeoff is true. I think from the conversations I had, the articles I've read, there are software or AI platforms doing that, but you're still having to follow up with the human eye to make sure that you're not missing anything. As we've known through these conversations, being 97% accurate on a takeoff could be very detrimental to you for that 3% missing down the line. I mean, that could make or break a company when it comes down to it because of those missing components. So, um, you know, I think that there being a good point, it's something that AI can take into the future, but maybe it's not something that it has the ability right now to take on fully with a full confidence from anybody in this space.
Yeah, and take that into a real world scenario. Say you're 99% correct, but you're still off of that 1% that AI didn't, that made the mistake. You're at the job site now, and you're trying to finish this, run of yours there, and you've got the wrong part.
Yeah.
It's turning, it's an elbow that turns left and turning instead of turning. The point is you get the wrong one. Now
Yeah.
everything stops.
Yep.
So the workers stop. Someone's got to go down to the supply house, get the right one. So now you've added a lot more labor onto a job just because AI kind of missed it in the beginning. And like you said, in the future, that probably won't be an issue. But as of right now, those symbols and the things that you mentioned earlier do look alike.
And I mean, the point is, like, if you use AI to do a takeoff and you're 99% accurate, but you're going back and checking, I mean, it does add some reassurance for you, at least, that what you're seeing and what that's seeing is accurate and you're catching that 1%. So, I mean, I think it is beneficial as something that can double check your work, give you a little bit more confidence when you're doing it by hand that you didn't miss anything, that, it might even make it a little bit faster because you can scan instead of have to intricately do it. So there are benefits, but I think AI at this point hasn't moved into the role that people think it is, that it's still an assistant to the estimator, an assistant to a junior estimator, even maybe something that can help the junior estimator learn over time to get up to
Mhm.
speed a lot faster. But I don't think it's ever going to take that human component out, especially in a space like this.
Agree 100%.
All right, then. Well, we've chit chatted long enough. Let's let the people jump into this full episode with Will. As always, Sal, great speaking with you. Great catching up. And if this is your first time listening, please hit the subscribe button. We have a bunch of episodes rolling out with Will on the AI topic over the next couple of weeks. So we hope you tune in. So as always, have a great day.
We'll see you.
Well, today for our guest, we have Will Zacher, CEO and co-founder of Makeoff. Now, I could start telling you what Makeoff is and what it does, but I won't do it as much justice as he will. So, Will, can you just give us some information about Makeoff? Let everybody know, what you guys do and sort of how you do it.
Yeah, Makeoff takes the takeoff quantities and turns it into a polished estimate using the bid documents to enrich the data and match it to real live pricing using NetPricer.
Okay. All right. I know there's a question that probably anybody that clicked on this episode wanted to hear and they wanted the answer. And it's been something I've seen left and right coming up. So let's just address that for every estimator that is on here right now. is an AI estimating platform built to replace them, the
Mhm.
estimator, or is it there to sort of change how they spend their day, what they're doing, how they do it? Let's just get this out of the way right in the beginning.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, so the way we think about it is for a long time, people used to do a lot of financial forecasting by hand, right? If you were a financial analyst or something like that, you'd have your calculator, you'd write out all your projections, and if you had to update an assumption or anything, you had to go back and make sure trace the dependencies back through the documents to make sure you didn't miss anything. And then in the 70s, the first spreadsheet technology started coming out, and now all of a sudden, you don't have to spend all that time tracing your dependents and all those sorts of things within your doc, and you were able to sort of focus more on what the forecast was about and start maybe modeling scenarios. And it basically gave people a lot more time back to do the job in a different way. And so we view estimating the same way, which is that there's a lot of time spent in estimating today that really should be done by machines. Reading the spec book end to end, if anyone is actually truly doing that, is probably a waste of time. But, doing things like the takeoff, making sure you understand the job, that stuff's not going to go away. And we think a lot of the more modern tools are going to allow people to spend more time with the clients and interfacing with the GCs, or in more hard bid scenarios, doing more value engineering and coming to the table with more options for the GC to win that business.
So, is AI becoming more? I've always seen, at least, let me give you some insight with myself, is that I see AI as like an assistant. If I'm
Yeah.
doing any marketing things or if I'm coming up with social media posts, whatever it is, it's my assistant. I'm putting my ideas in there. It's helping me with different wording. Like you said, it's taking away some of that time if I had to go and rethink writing something from being doom and gloom to positive. That could take me an hour or so.
Mhm.
So, is AI in this space for estimating, is it more as an assistant for the estimator than anything else, something that can be there when it's needed?
I think if you're using AI at a high level, right, that's going to work. That's going to be an assistant for you personally. But if you have to roll something out within an organization, you're going to need it to be a little bit more programmatic, because on our side we see all the questions that people ask our
Mhm.
system, right? No one asks the same question twice. So what'll end up happening is if you try to operationalize things that are open ended, like assistants. This is why we haven't really seen a lot of great use cases of assistants within companies, because people are just going to use them in different ways. And so you want something that's a little bit more programmatic, which is kind of
Okay.
how we've approached it, is making sure that, for example, the bid review. Bid review technically is a more structured process that happens within these companies. And so that's something that can be automated. What we're seeing with our pilots is about 50 to 60% of it can be automated away through AI, just
Okay.
by asking very specific questions around the text that's inherent in the documents. But yeah, we see it more as a team, a sort of a teammate at
Okay.
the end, an assistant if you're talented at using it.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. Obviously, I see the Facebook posts. We brought this up before. People are always worried about AI taking over, that one person can just go in there and
Mhm.
dump a PDF file in there and, it spits out your bid and everything's done and you don't have to do anything else.
That'd be
That
awesome.
doesn't be the case, right?
No, no, definitely not. And even if it was, you'd probably spend as much time reviewing that takeoff or that output as you would doing it yourself. I'm sure you guys have been in this space for a while. What have you guys seen in terms of technology changes? Because this can't be new on the AI side. Like,
Hmm.
have you guys seen other things that have people were like, "Oh, my job's going to go away with this type of technology"?
I feel like Sal's the best one to answer since Sal's been around since a long time. Let's just put it that
Yeah,
way.
you could say dirt. That's okay.
I
Um,
didn't want to have to say it. I was trying to find a nice way to say, decades and decades and decades and decades, but we'll just go with that.
Yeah, to your point, Will, when the first like computerized estimating packages came out,
Mhm,
everybody at that point said, "Oh, well, the guys who do paper and pencil, who have been great, they were." There was even a guy once who would just pick up the old green bar print of all these items, and he's kind of just weigh them in his hands and say, "Oh, I know how much it says," without even looking at it. So
mhm.
these guys always pride themselves on being able to do the job great. And then when an actual computerized program came out, that shocked everybody. They were like, Oh, well, everyone's going to lose their job. All they have to do is just, as Chris mentioned earlier, all they have to do is just throw in some data and it's all done for them. Well, we found out, obviously, decades later, that all it did was it helped the estimator become a better estimator. All the things that they had routinely had to do over and over and over again, these now the computer programs actually did them for them. And then secondarily, like you're pointing out, Will, it gave them the ability of doing more shortcuts.
Yeah.
And then they spent more of their time reviewing the job or double checking on things or making sure that it fit what they were looking to do before they went out to the marketplace with it. So, yeah, to answer your question, finally, yes, when the first computers came out, everybody was just threatened at that time.
Yeah, I'd imagine the supplier reps. Did you have any pushback from like distributor reps being like, well, what do they need me for if I'm ordering online? Because I mean,
Of
that
course,
still exists and seems like something that would have been a fear with cloud-based software.
Excellent point. When the internet first came out, that's exactly that. Well, the reps don't even necessary anymore. But actually, take a step back. The internet was supposed to replace brick and mortar, so there were going to be no more distributors. There was be no more, branch down the street which you could go pick up your stuff. Everything's going to be delivered to you, so you didn't need all this stuff. So yeah, distribution had a big shock with it at first. Obviously, the reps were secondarily realizing that, okay, well, if they can just go onto a site and do it, then they don't need me anymore. Of course, both were proven out wrong because what they've done is, again, enhanced the process. The internet is given the ability of, doing a lot more research stuff that you used to have to go to trade shows to get these big printed binder books that you'd store on your walls to get that research for you. That's really helped out that side of the business. But yet it didn't take over the distribution. It didn't take over sales guys. It actually just enhanced what they were doing.
So would you say this, you mentioned a few points there of how technology has come into the industry, especially the estimating space. Would you say this is sort of another turning point where, you had the introduction of computers and the introduction of cloud software, and then now AI is sort of like that next stepping stone in the evolution of the estimating space?
Absolutely. One of the things when you look at the original computers we just talked about right now, then the internet, each of them did directly affect a certain part of the business. Some things were downsized, some things were eliminated, those kinds of things, but it also created whole other opportunities and whole other businesses and whole other jobs that we never even thought of. If you talk to someone 40 years ago and said, "Oh, you can make just as much money as a working from home than you can at a job we have to go in and punch in a time clock every single day," they would have thought you're crazy. Yet all of these different technologies helped invent other jobs and other types of businesses that flourished because of that. And AI is going to be the same thing. This is the beginning touch point for that, and what it will create later on for our industry. It's more than likely things we just never even thought about.
Well, now that we have an understanding that the role of the estimator isn't disappearing, well, let me ask you, how will it change? How would using something like Makeoff change the estimators, let's just say day to day versus what they've been used to for the last like decade before this had rolled out? What kind of small changes or large overall changes could they expect as AI is becoming more mainstream in, the estimating space?
Yeah, there's a few things we think will be super beneficial. So one is the go no go scenario, right? Where you get the plan sets, the docs, and you're trying to decide if this is something you even want to bid. And
Mhm.
so we think that AI can shorten that process significantly.
Okay.
And so that's one thing that we think is going to be extremely beneficial. And coupling that with the types of searches that large language models can do, should also help establish, a baseline for the GC or whoever's actually putting the bid package out there to make sure that, the bid package might be really great, but maybe the GC has a spotty record or something like that. You should be able to surface those things in the go no go pretty fast.
Okay.
The second thing is just less generalized reading.
Mhm.
Documents themselves don't seem to be laid out very well, and that's something I've sort of verified with a couple hundred pre-con departments now, which is you've got relevant information scattered across what could be thousands of pages of documents, and you want the traditional way of reading is not gonna cut it in terms of being able to put bids out there at a high velocity while maintaining quality. So that would be the second thing we think is going to happen is people are going to start using AI, like our system to curate the information that they have about the job itself, walking through the packages one by one, for example. Okay, walk me through the lighting package. All right, here are the general, here are all my, general notes. We also picked up a note on the architectural plans for the reflected ceiling plan that affects the lighting package, right? And so having a more curated walk through the project is going to be a superior way to assess the job as opposed to just generalized reading and holding it in your head. The third one is that the bid review stage, we believe, is going to become even more important. In AI, there's a concept called evals, which is whenever you see a new model come out, you'll see the benchmarks, right? They'll be like, oh, this is this scored 88% on coding benchmarks or whatever. And so there is no benchmark for electrical estimating, but each department already kind of has this built in, which is their review before sending a bid out. And so by building a labeling process at the end where you have all your bids going out through your bid review, and the people in your pre-construction team who have the most experience are saying, well, you forgot this. Well, you didn't think about this. Well, you've got code risk here that you didn't really address, right? Capturing all that information at that level is going to allow you to automate more and more while maintaining quality within your bid, because all those things will be caught. Whereas like when we first started, I've had plenty of meetings where people are like, can you just automate the takeoff? And you can automate some of the counting, but what ends up happening is if you ever used any of these AI takeoff tools, you end up just reviewing a lot of things, right?
Mm.
Like, is this a receptacle or is this half a circle? And that's not really the best use of your senior estimator's time necessarily.
Yeah.
But by using an AI solution at the review stage and labeling the information as it goes out, you can start to quickly assess other providers and other automation solutions because you'll have the answers and you're building an answer key yourself. And so we think that's going to allow people to automate their bid processes much faster without the drop off in quality. Sorry for the monologue. I know that was maybe a little long,
Yeah.
but
No, you're
That's
good.
great.
And it's funny because you started off mentioning about the go, no go. And it made me think about an interview we had with Barney like 2 years ago. And he said that at the time on his computer, he had a sticky note, and it was like the 5 requirements for them to actually explore a bid any further than just the surface. So he would go and open up, a bid, and he would look and be like, does it meet these 5 requirements? And if it didn't meet them, he would just move on to the next bid because he
yeah.
knew these are the 5 things I'm good at. This is our wheelhouse. This is what we do. And if it doesn't meet these specifications, I'm just going to skip the bid because it's going to probably take me some time. I'm going to have to dig into it, figure out if it's profitable. There's 2-3 days. Well, I can go find a bid myself that I know meets these specs, and I can do that rather quickly. With this, it sounds like it could actually open up his world in that scenario, because instead of just looking at every job that meets his 5 requirements, he might be able to expand his horizon on jobs by using the sort of the no-go sort of feature you were mentioning and go, this isn't necessarily 100% my wheelhouse, but running this through this quickly, I can see where there's opportunity, and it's something that we could probably move ourselves into. So it could actually open up opportunity to more electrical contractors that are in a niche space that have this checklist that goes, hey, if it doesn't meet this, we're not even looking at that job, where it might help them to expand it, not have to pour in the amount of resources it would a human being to explore. Does that sound sort of like a case for that, what you were referring to?
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if you guys are running into this too, but I've spoken with a lot of pre-con teams that are struggling to hire electrical estimators because the field knowledge is kind of
Mhm.
shrinking. I don't know. Have you, Sal and Chris, have you guys run into that?
Yeah, that's
Absolutely.
Yeah.
we've done an episode or two about that at this point.
Yeah. So that's something that one of the benefits of this system is to basically bridge that gap, right? To have someone, your pre-con leaders they know whatever, they've seen a lot of different jobs. They know what to look for, making sure that these younger guys and girls who are estimating have, safeguards to make sure that they're, not missing anything. Right. And so that allows them to take on more complex work that they might be able to do in the field, but their estimating department might not be able to handle otherwise.
And something else that you were mentioning, it just reminded me of a post that went up today on our Net Pricer page. It
Mhm.
was talking about how AI is beneficial when reading through those 200 pages that come through for a project, and how in, the first couple of pages, it might say one thing, but buried 160 pages later is a contradictory statement.
Yep.
And as you mentioned, most people, it takes a while to get there, and you might be a bit tired by the time you get to page 160, and you might miss that little note that's contradicting on page number 3, and it's missed completely. What you're saying here is that with this review process, it can sort of catch those for you.
Mhm.
So, not that you're being lazy, but you're getting a fresh set of eyes that can review it rather quickly for you and point out some of those main concerns that it might be having through these documents that tired eyes might miss over a time frame.
Yeah, yeah, it really just comes down to attention, right? I mean, how
Mhm,
it's a lot to hold in your head, and seeing this, getting into this space and seeing what people are doing. I mean, this is a lot of information, and so AI is exceptional at recall, which means
mhm,
as long as you target it on the right search, it's not gonna be able to understand your project as well as an estimator right away. But if as long as you target the searches on, like, for what we do is sub packages, right? Focusing on, like, okay, where are the conflicts between mechanical, electrical, and plumbing? Because those always come up and they seem
mhm,
to always be buried on someone else's page.
Mhm.
So making sure that it's looking specifically for those things. The recall is, 80 to 90%. And when we were evaluating this problem, we kind of looked at how well reading comprehension factors in, because a lot of this estimating is focused on and predicated on the fact that someone can read it and recall a lot of the information very well. But no one's brain, it works that well at recall. It's roughly about a 40 to 50% recall rate. And then, what we sourced it from a legal review study where someone was poring over legal docs because legal AI has had a similar problem.
mhm,
And what they found was that only about a third of what was found in the first pass survived into the second pass as actually being a miss. And so by taking a different technological approach, you can kind of protect yourself in a different way against these kinds of misses, right?
mhm.
Between the documents, and basically build a mental model that lives in your computer about the job that's accessible by anybody. So even the estimator who didn't do the job can be brought up to speed. You're thinking like the director of pre-con or your director of estimating can be brought up to speed very quickly on jobs that they didn't estimate and have a high level of specificity into what the job entails.